Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers podcast. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk about everything going on in the world of TV and film. This week, we have both seen Project Hail Mary, and we're very excited to talk about it. With me, as always, is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well. I thought I was going to be alone out here, Taran, on my voyage into space, but here you are.
You know, sometimes you just need a partner. So really not much, I think, to talk about outside of Project Hail Mary. It's kind of been dominating the headlines in terms of how well it's doing and how popular it is. There's not really any new shows that I've been catching up on. I've finished One Piece season 2, continuing to watch The Capture, stuff like that. But I think we're mostly just going to go all in on Project Hail Mary. We're going to do a spoiler chat about it. It's good. Go see it if you haven't. But I think that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit of a I try not to push the you have to see it in theaters, because I know that it costs so much to see things in theaters. It's not always accessible for people to go to a theater depending on where you live. So I try hard to not be like, oh, you have to go see this while it's in movie theaters. This is one that I do think it is well worth it to see it in movie theaters. I think it's one of the most visually stunning movies. I feel like the last time I felt like this, I think, was maybe Dune. Is anything else? There's probably other stuff that I'm fully missing, but it is sort of like a cinematic experience. So I would highly recommend.
The last time I went to like a 70 millimeter theater was for Sinners, which was also very visually great.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and then this movie is so fun. I think it's so fun. So just highly recommend it, and excited to talk about it with you, Taran.
Yes. So we will be talking spoilers for Project Hail Mary. If you have not seen it yet and you plan to see it, now would be the time to pause the podcast and come back to it once you've seen the movie. And you should go see it in theaters. I do think that this is it's one of those movies. You should go see it in theaters. It's, whether or not you think it's a masterpiece or just a good time, it is the kind of thing you want to go see in a theater. The sound, the visuals are going to make it a better movie. And it's the kind of thing that is, if you like movies, which I imagine you do if you listen to this podcast, the kind of thing that you want to experience in a theater. So go and do that, and then come back and we'll talk some spoilers. Grace, you had seen it last week. You had mentioned that you liked it. I think my experience of the movie was basically exactly what I thought it would be, which was like, it was a good time. It was a little over 2.5 hours that didn't feel like a long 2.5 hours. There were moments in the movie where I was like, oh, I really like this. This could be like one of my favorites. Overall, I think it just ended up being just a good time for me. Just a good, fun movie. Lots of funny jokes, lots of heartwarming moments. And it's not really one I think I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about, but I really enjoyed the experience of watching it.
I feel like I'm like, apologies for the space, but I'm over the moon about this movie. I think this movie is so good. I have read the book, so I've been in tons of I'm not in it. I've seen lots of the discourse about whether or not this movie is better or worse because you've read the book, and then you go see the movie. And I feel like most people are saying that this movie is not as good as the book. And also, like, you're better off if you're just going to see the movie, better off not having read the book. People think that's more fun for people who are not book readers. And I don't know. I'm like not feeling that at all. There is a thing that happened this week where Andy Weir talked about the fact that he doesn't have a very visual imagination. And potentially people talking about it, that he has this thing, I think it's called, I'm not going to say the word properly, so I'm not going to say it. But this idea that most people, when you say like picture an apple in your head, get this very clear image of an apple in your head. And he's like,
Aphantasia.
Yeah. He's like, I don't
have that too.
You don't see it? Oh, so I think I have it as well after like thinking where the way he was describing it. And then the way I started to look it up. It's like, I think this is why I love to watch a movie and then read a book, because when I'm reading a book, I can't get like a visual representation of the thing that's happening. I can't create the image of the person that they're talking about. It is just concepts and ideas. And so he was talking about how, despite having written the book, once he saw Rocky and how Rocky was created for the movie, that is now he's sort of like back canons
Mm.
everything. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know. I'm feeling like I didn't have. I love the book. I think the book is incredible. I really loved reading through the book. I don't feel like I feel like I love the movie just as much as I loved reading the book. So I'm really like, I'm 5 stars. I'm like, could this be the best picture next year? I don't know. I really love it, Taran. I'm excited to
Yeah.
like get into the details about what's not, because I don't think it's not working for people. I think there are things that are not maybe elevating it uh into sort of a 5 star masterpiece, whatever, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, with Aphantasia, I think I think it's one of the reasons why I love adaptations,
Right.
because it is such a new experience for me, and I don't get as much maybe disconnect between like what I had pictured
Mhm.
and what I'm seeing, which I think a lot of people do. They get very like, no, this isn't what I had imagined. But like for
Right.
me, it's like, this is cool.
Right.
This is what it
Right.
might look like.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, visually this was fantastic, and it was really cool to see things. Now, I had also read the book like a while ago at this point. Like there were a lot of details that I did not remember.
Yeah.
Um, but I think there's a few things that are going on. Like, I think that if you've read the book, you have in your head an idea of what the story is, and this is a very faithful adaptation of the book, just minus some parts.
Yes.
Mostly is what I'm able to gather, because I don't remember all of it. And there are some of those parts I think that you do miss, and it's like, I get why they're not there, because apparently the first cut of this movie was roughly 4 hours long,
Mhm.
and they had to
Would
cut it
love
down
to
to two
see
and
it.
a half,
Would love to see it.
right? And
Yeah.
so there are some things that aren't there that could have made the story stronger, um, and some things that they took out that probably make the movie stronger. Some of the like more in-depth scientific explanations probably don't need to be there, because the heart of the movie is the relationship between Grace and Rocky, and you don't really need to know exactly why again, we're in spoiler territory, the predator life like escaped the containers. Like, you get a brief explanation of it, and really the whole process of that was sped up in the movie, and I think that's mostly fine. But there is a world that this is a 4 hour movie, and we get a little more of the scientific explanation, and we get a little bit more of the extra pieces, and I think that the people that really liked the book, which is a
Mhm.
lot of people, is a very popular author, they might have liked that movie better, but I don't think everybody would have liked the movie better.
Yes.
And I don't think it would be performing as well with the broad audience. And so I think that this version of the movie is has successfully split the difference and found the compromise in exactly the center of where it needs to be to hit every quadrant of audience. Perfect for kids, for parents, for people who like sci-fi, for smart fiction, for funny movies, for visually stunning things, and manages to pack it into 2.5 hours. It doesn't feel too long. And so I think because it pleases everybody, it's not going to necessarily like slam for everybody. But like, I think the range for this movie is probably around, if we go out of five, like 4 to 5 stars, or 8 to 10 stars. Because at minimum, you're like, that was great, good stuff. And at maximum, you're like, that was perfect. That hit me exactly where I needed to.
Yeah. The thing that you said about the fact that it doesn't change things, it just sort of removes them. There's been a common, like I see it on Instagram, reels or TikTok, where it's the joke is like someone's watching the movie with a book reader, and the book reader is like, hey, did you know that like actually like this thing is also happening? Where the best example of that is one of the reasons that Grace ends up going on the um like he gets picked to go at the end, where he's like forced to go, is not just that he's been part of the project and been the beginning and would make sense to be the scientific person who could be on this journey, is also that there's only so many people who have this gene that can survive basically being in a coma, which also like I feel like that's a part that like, you know, why the two other people die is the part that really gets
They're
yada
just like,
yada.
well, it's none of this is safe.
Right. Um, but that's part of the reason why like it's not just that he um uh could go, it's that he actually kind of has to go. And
Mm.
I think that that actually is really interesting to think about the fact that they omitted that piece of the story, and also like a lot of the back and forth um between him and I'm just like forget I feel like her name like barely gets mentioned in the movie, but the Sandra Bullock characters what her actual
Ava
character's
Spratt.
name is. Yeah, Strat. It's really much more like confrontational. There's some stuff about the fact that he's going to like actually sabotage the mission if he's sent, and she sort of like calls his bluff and sends him. I feel like there is this movie, what I think I love about it, and what I really loved about the book as well, is this book is full of optimism. Like, and this movie is full of optimism in terms of Grace keeps like ending up in these situations where it's not just that like he comes up with the solution, but it's that like through sheer force of like connecting to other, at first humans and then other you know, humanity, I guess not humanity, life, um is what sort of like propels the saving of not just one planet but multiple planets. And to me, like all of that stuff like overrides to me like anything that might critique the movie on. And honestly, I can't even feel like I'm like having that much that I can like find that I personally think I could critique. It'd be interesting to chat through with you to see if like I sort of end up agreeing with people about, because like for me, the book worked in spite of all of the scientific stuff in the book. I'm
Mm.
like, okay, like it's a little to me like when I read Lord of the Rings and it was like, there's a lot of music in here. And I'm like, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip over the music, but the story is great. To me, I feel like that's how I was reading Project Hail Mary. That was like a lot of science stuff that like, even though he's doing his very best to figure it, to explain it to me, I'm not sure I'm really getting it, but I am getting the sense of why it's important that he like figure this thing out, or he and Rocky figure this thing out, which I actually think they do effectively well
Mhm.
in the movie, where they sort of like present that a thing as a problem without needing to explain every, you know, reason why it's a problem, and then we're on the journey to figure out how to solve that problem. And I thought that was like really really well done, and it's that sense of optimism for me that is the most alluring thing about Project Hail Mary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mentioned this last week that my experience with Andy Weir as an author is that you know, I don't I think he writes very fun books. Um I'm a huge like character theme person.
Right.
And Andy Weir is very much a like plot setting person,
Uh-huh.
right? Like I'm gonna put a smart person in an interesting position and then like watch them figure it out,
Right.
and that's fun. And his characters are usually like a little shallow, not like a it's he's not trying to do a character study, but like, you know, they're sometimes a little one note. I think like in his books his characters are often kind of just variations of one another, and his dialogue is usually like overly quippy for me. Very like just constant like nerdy jokes. Like everybody has the same voice, or similar voices, and that can be a little frustrating to me. And that's why I think the adaptations I think are actually pretty good because for his stuff, because like they kind of smooth out the rougher sides of his work, in my opinion,
Mhm.
in the character work and the dialogue, while keeping the really strong aspects, which is like the setting and the plot and the problem solving. And I think what makes Project Hail Mary his most popular book is that despite some of the struggle with the characters that I think he often or sometimes has, we have this connection between Grace and Rocky, which feels like more than enough. It kind of like solves the Martian problem by introducing some actual like real heart to the story. And so I think that the movie is a great like again adaptation. It's a great version of this story, and probably the better version of it if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for like characters that feel a little more real, dialogue that feels a little better. It's a lot of the humor is there, but it's a little more natural, I would say, in the movie. Um, but there are some things, and there's one thing in particular that I thought was missing from the movie that I wish they had been able to fit in, and that is that uh, if you're gonna look at character and theme, the one that they did try to weave into this as much as possible, and the one that Andy Weir put in the book is this theme of like bravery and self sacrifice.
Mhm.
And Grace, as the person who you find out did not volunteer for this suicide mission, um, at the end of the story, goes on what he believes to be a suicide mission to go help his friend. Because in the book, it is made clear to you and to Grace that if he does not go home and instead goes to save Rocky, not only will he never make it home, but he will die. He does not have enough food to survive the journey to wherever that he's going to go. Once he makes it to Rocky's ship, he doesn't have enough food to survive to Rocky's home planet or whatever the case is, right? And so it's a real like, I'm now actively making the choice. Who would you die for? He's found that person. It's Rocky. And that still exists in the movie. But they don't really do the starvation plot because I assume because they didn't want to have to deal with the explanation of, okay, once he gets there, they actually then figure out how to feed him and keep him alive. And then he does actually make it there. So he thought he was going on a suicide mission, but it turns out he wasn't. And so I get why they took it out because you kind of get the point, but it was something that I felt like it lacked a little bit of the punch that I was looking for to like finish this character arc and really put like a bow on the theme. Because not only was that part not there, but there wasn't a ton of emphasis on it either.
Um, it's a really good point. I think like I've watched it twice now, so I went to go see it again. And the thing for me that happened the first time was I was really worried. I was not checking my watch, which is a thing that I typically do a lot in a movie. I'm always looking at the runtime. And yet I was like, "Uh-oh, I don't think they're doing the ending. I don't think there's like enough time to do the ending." I thought that once Rocky and Grace separate and they've solved it, and I was such a fool because then they obviously do the ending. They do it.
Mhm.
Um, but then they do this little like him like he's sort of monologuing on his video about like that he can either go home or he can go to to save Rocky. And I guess I guess yeah, I think you're really right that like it is not so much deemed as a suicide mission as just deemed as like I'll fake, and I think like
I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna be able to
I'm
come
not
home.
going home. I'm not going home. Yes. And but they already mentioned food in the
Mhm.
movie. The scene where Ryland reveals like that he's not going home. He talks about how much food he has food
There's
to
yeah,
live
there's
for a few
definitely a
years.
world where it could be implied to you that he thought it was a suicide, maybe, but
No, I'm
they don't
defending
show the
your
solution, so
no, I'm defending your take here that
no,
like I
yeah.
feel like they should just add it in. You could just add it in. Maybe it's like that thing of I don't know, but they've already talked about the fact that he's gonna die, and I think like the first like 10 minutes of the movie where you see the two dead pilot, like the pilot and the in the astronaut. Like it's pretty grim, you know. So I think they could have gone there. I think you're right. I think in the first time I watched it, I was so hung up on the like, oh, I don't think they're doing the ending, that I was so happy
Mm.
that they were doing the ending, and so I was fine with it. But it's a line of dialogue you could add in, so it is a really interesting choice that they don't figure out a way to sort of insert it. It doesn't feel like it would take that much to add that.
Yeah, and I mean, what my guess is that it was there originally,
Right.
and it was something that they had to remove. And I think like if there are any again like small flaws in the movie, I think that the ending is that because it's not just that too. I also felt like the scene where he's saying he can't do it, just like I just wanted something a little more. You know what I mean? Like he's like, sorry, can't do it. And I found myself, and you might disagree. I found myself kind of being like, really, like a little surprised. You're supposed to be surprised, but I felt like I didn't quite fully like understand where his fear was coming from because everything I had seen from him in the entire movie and in the flashbacks was that he was pretty brave, pretty daring, pretty like whatever. And I feel like I wanted a little bit more to understand him in the moment where he turns it down, so that it is more of a turn when he actually does go. That's a smaller critique, I would say, but I
Yeah.
think that in general, all of this stuff was probably there in the original version, in the original versions, perhaps, and just had to be cut for time, which I also get. And I think that at the end of the day, like this small stuff matters to a person like me who's looking for like the deeper character arcs and themes, and doesn't matter as much to most viewers who just want the good funny parts, right? And that's no shade on them. Like I think that the movie is probably more entertaining to have prioritized those parts than the parts that I was looking for. Um, and maybe that is the right choice. You know, I think that there's always with art like the balance between entertaining and sort of meaningful. And ideally, you get both. And I think this movie did have both. But that was like the scale that they had to operate.
Yeah, what's interesting is I think the some of the stuff you're talking about in terms of by the time we get to this moment where Grace is going to say no, that he doesn't want to go on the mission. In the book, I mean, it's one of the biggest challenges of something like this, and I think something that like I love The Martian, and also think like there's a challenge to like how do you switch from first person narration to watching something. So they do that in this by other obviously he can have these scenes with Rocky, which we can talk about, where they can talk about each other and their life, but also and then the flashback as well. You can do that through like seeing the flashbacks. You can give some character stuff there, and then the videos that he like the documenting of the videos that are going to go back to Earth, where he can sort of have some narration, but it's because you're changing the format, it's so significantly less than in the book. And so yeah, potentially that moment where they end up where he says no. I It's hard for me, I think, to think about. Sometimes I am a little like, oh yeah, well then that's the story. And part of me is I forgot that he, like
Me too.
I could not remember why he can't remember. I thought I just, and then as you're watching it, I was like, is it just a thing of like because he's waking up from the coma, that there's some sort of like memory issue and then he slowly just remembers it, and then midway there I was like, there has to be a bigger reason than that in terms of like him trying to remember what happened, and then obviously there is the twist. And so in the moment when he sort of says, well, it's more so like it's I think not so much that moment where he says no for real to me. I feel like I already knew it based on um like when he's saying no in front of when they're all looking at him,
Mhm.
like that sort of reveal of like, oh, you're the guy who's gonna go.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, as it was coming, my memory started. Oh, okay, this makes sense, and then that's why this, and like, oh, thematically, okay, this,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. And so I feel like because I'm like coming in with all that, like my brain is in a little bit of a different moment in terms of like
Mhm.
that scene. That's when that scene where he says no, and then she's like, well, sorry, we're just gonna do it anyway, and then she calls in the people. You get 2 laugh lines in that, like what are supposed to be laugh lines in that scene. And actually, having watched it the first time, which was a week early preview screening in 70 millimeter, that crowd was eating up every moment of comedy. So the first time I
Oh
saw
yeah.
it, that was a very like ravenous crowd. The second time I saw it, and I shall not try to, but I was in Montreal, and so the movie was in English, but I also was like very much being like, "Are you not laughing as much because you're not like you're seeing this like 2 weeks after it released, or are you a snobby French crowd?" Was a little bit of what I was thinking, but they were not laughing as much as the other crowd. And it was interesting to sort of see that scene play out twice because in the first one they loved it, and part of me felt like what I think that this movie does really well is I don't think it's like so funny, but it has comedy basically like in every scene. I think some of that stuff you're talking about where Andy Weir is a very like quippy dialogue
Mhm.
person. There's a little bit of that where like it's almost like every scene in this movie is kind of like trying to be or like, it's mandated to be like 15% funnier, which then I think over the
It
course
has
of
that
the movie.
Marvel kind of effect for sure, but done very well.
Agreed. But in that scene, you get the him climbing up on the thing and be like, no.
Mhm.
And then you get the second moment of her being on the phone, being like, yeah, he said no. And he runs by in his you get two sort of comedy moments. And
Yeah.
that scene is that piece and then the piece where he goes to save Rocky really are the thesis. And so I for the first time, Taryn, I think I am seeing because a lot of the stuff that people are like, oh, I wish we got this, I wish we got this, I wish we got this, which is like they nuclear bomb Antarctica to
Mhm.
have like there's
There's some
all this stuff
darkness from the book that is left out for sure.
where people are like, "Oh my god, they should have done that." And I think to some degree, what I was sort of saying earlier is that I feel like what people are vibing with in the way that they like this movie, it's not like, "Oh my god, I can't believe they didn't bomb, the plane." It's that they're like, "Oh, they didn't show it." But like me as a book reader, I know that they did that thing and it's still
Mhm.
canon in the world, which I think is like better than changing stuff. Um, but these two thesis scenes, I think, are like highlighting a little bit of where I'm starting to understand, like, oh, I get why it's like a 4 or a 4.5 for people instead of a full 5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think and this is not something that I found lacking necessarily, but I did see some talk of like that they missed some of the desperation from Earth, which includes like the fact that they bomb Antarctica. I don't remember the science reasons for it, but like they had to do that for some reason, and it's like you
It's to
can
speed up
feel.
global warming, which keeps like breaking my brain. I'm like,
There you go.
why would we
Melting the ice, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, to speed up global warming, which for some reason would help with what's happening.
Because it's cooling. The
Because
sun
it
is cooling, so
right.
they needed to warm, maybe.
Correct. Correct. Exactly right. Correct. Yes.
um, but you get more of an impending sense of doom, and Strat's character is a bit darker and more dictatorial. Um, and so you feel a little bit more of that desperation. And I do think the movie is overall a bit lighter in that regard, but I don't think that's a huge deal. There are some subtle indications that things are continuing to go wrong, and they do tell you that things are going wrong. Obviously, people like showing and not telling. I'm assuming again that maybe some of those parts were cut for time. Um, and if you're gonna have to choose parts to be cut for time, then that's what you got to do. However, as you said, I do think that like playing the moment of turning it down as a bit of slapstick, maybe we could have cut out a little bit of that humor there. And again, it's just like I feel like, and I don't remember if this was an issue with the book too, but like by the time we get to him turning it down, like right from the beginning, we've seen him be brave, like over and over, and risk his life over and over. Like from the beginning of meeting Rocky, he takes his helmet off. He also like goes
Right.
out in the ship and like dive catches things in like very heroic ways and risks his life a billion times. And then we see that he wasn't willing to do it. And then that choice at the end doesn't feel like a change in his character. It felt like something that was basically has been there since we started the movie, even before he found Rocky to some degree. And so I feel like that undermines it a little bit as well. But it's again, it's like, I'm nitpicking here. It's a really good movie. It's a really good story, and it's really fun and entertaining. Um, and it's just a great experience. Like, this isn't something that I think isn't focused on enough in media, which is like, it was a good experience watching it. It was long, but didn't feel long. And that is huge. Like, to be able to, and this is part of why I think the movie's doing so well right now, because to be able to take somebody's brain that is existing in our current society, with everything happening, by the way, I think people always say, always, like,
Mhm.
people always
Yes.
think that their time is like the worst
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Um, but it's, it's pretty bad. It's not great right
Uh-huh.
now. There's a lot of things weighing on people. And I think to be able to give them something that feels hopeful, and takes their mind completely into a new world, and they just get to live there for 2.5 hours. And not for nothing, I think that's part of why, like, some of that darkness isn't there. Like, I don't think we needed in this time, the general audience, a dictatorship, of a bombing of a country, of a continent.
Mhm.
Like, I think that this loose feeling of like the world is coming together to solve a problem feels pretty nice in this fantasy world.
Well, also, I said this. There was a thing I said recently, and I can't remember. I feel like I don't know who I said it to, but there was this idea that I think there's also this world where right now we also want media that says, like, acknowledges that that there are problems, not to be like, not media that's like, oh, there's no issues in this movie. Like, um Sandra Bullock's character says it multiple times, I believe, like, hey, like, the world isn't like, we only have enough food if like for
Yeah,
like to be, if the world actually like comes together and like figures it out. We're like, we're
which it
doing
won't.
this like, yeah, it's just like they won't do that. And I think that like some of that in the movie is really good, of like, it does take people who are willing to go like a sacrifice to like solve some of these problems. It does take coming together. You can't do any of this alone, but you also are up against these like forces that maybe are not so willing to like, try to figure it out, which I think is really good. I'm wondering, I think like we could go one of two ways here, which is like, I don't know. There's the Sandra Huller stuff where like the relationship between her and Grace, I think, is quite. There's an added dimension to it in the movie.
Mm.
The other stuff that I think is like the most fascinated I've been by a movie in a long time is how they actually did all the Rocky stuff. And I don't know if you've been these have come up on your feed, but just how practical um, the creation of Rocky was.
No, I
Um,
haven't seen this.
Okay, so James Ortiz, you see on here, it says stars Ryan Gosling, Sandra Huller, James Ortiz. James Ortiz is the puppeteer who controls Rocky, but he also voiced Rocky. And
Mm.
basically, Rocky Ryan Gosling did not act on set alone. I mean, there are times when he did because he's the only one on in the scene. But once Rocky shows up, Rocky and James Ortiz is always on set acting against. They could have done this tennis ball CGI style, and they didn't. Rocky was created practically, and then puppeteered on set. They edited out all of the people and the folks who did it. They did a lot of CGI, but they didn't do any CGI that wasn't based on the practical effects. They even built a miniature version of Rocky to do the CGI where they needed to do that differently than the big version, the scaled version that was like on set. Even when it's in a ball, there are little like openings in that ball to like someone to puppeteer and move Rocky. And it's not a thing that I feel like when you watch it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's practical. You could have guessed, you could have like quizzed me after the movie. I'd be like, Rocky's probably fully CGI. And there's a lot of CGI used, but I do think there's a thing where like in the like knowing it afterwards, I do feel like there is something that feels authentic about this movie. It's like acted
Mm.
and performed in a way that I think you can sort of. I always talk about this where something is like sort of done worse, you notice the absence of it. When it's done well, it just feels like it's a fully lived in feel, like full world, and
Yeah.
I'm so impressed. Highly encourage anybody, like, once you've seen the movie, to like be diving into sort of like all of the behind the scenes stuff of how James Ortiz did. And he's Rocky's voice is just James Ortiz's voice. The one that they ultimately come up with, like when they choose, is just him. He's the one voicing like amaze, amaze, amaze. Like it's just him. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, very good, voice
So
work.
good. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rocky is, I think, like, for as much as I've heard a lot about like Ryan Gosling, movie star. Look at him with this big hit movie. Is he one of the top stars? I've seen that like everywhere. I have not seen much. Granted, I've been trying to avoid as much
Yes.
as possible. People talking about like James Ortiz, even, but like the performance of Rocky, whether it's the voice acting or perhaps the puppetry, like that was so key to this movie working. If that doesn't work, the movie does not work. Um, and and it worked really well. I think it worked really really well. I think that it really did bring to life Rocky in a way that, again, I remember really liking Rocky and the relationship that Rocky had with Ryland Grace in the book, but I don't remember being so like, oh, he's so, because you couldn't be. I can't be like, oh, he's so
Mhm.
adorable. I mean, like the voice is there, like it's, again, I think part of
Amaze,
what
amaze,
makes,
amaze. It's like great. Yeah. But
yes, part
mhm.
of what makes this book work for Andy Weir so well, in my opinion, is that like he created a character that had a good excuse to talk funny.
I was gonna say this earlier when you're like the dialogue is bad. It's like, well,
Yeah,
an easy way to do that is to be like a guy who's basically just learned English.
exactly. And so, like, it works a lot better because you're not expecting Rocky to speak in any other way. And even then, it sometimes
Uh-huh.
was, I think, in my memory, a little too cutesy
Yeah.
occasionally. But I think that with the visual, it actually works even better because you have a physical thing acting out the cutesiness, and that makes the voice fit more. And so, yeah, I think Rocky was so good to make this whole thing work. And really, I think Ryan Gosling was great as well. I do think I had a slight thing with Ryan Gosling where I was like, he's too handsome for this role.
What are you gonna do? I don't. I okay. There's a thing I heard about Ryan Gosling that sort of put him into perspective, which is why he makes a good SNL host, is which said he's always willing to lower his station in a skit, and it
Mm,
works because he's so conventionally attractive, he's so seemingly nice and charming, and the
mhm.
joke is always like whoever he is with is sort of better than him. And he sort of elevates that other person. He's very humbling in a sense. And I saw an interview that he was doing, and he was talking about the idea that like he wasn't alone working on this movie, even though the idea is like guy goes on a solo space mission. And he was like, what's funny is that like Rocky has become a real person, a real thing, to the point where like sometimes they'll like I'll get onto a red carpet and they'll be like, hey, do you know Rocky's here? Like Rocky, like they have a space for Rocky to be before that he has to be like
That's
puppeted
funny.
out. And he's like, I'm not even like the main movie star of this movie, which I think is untrue, but I think it's very funny that he sort of talked about it in that way of like being upstaged by his co-star who is a puppet. But yeah, I mean, I think Rocky, again, as somebody who didn't really have an idea of what Rocky looked like in the book, I think like seeing him, I think it's very impressive as well to like have a faceless rock creature
Mm,
who is as sort of um like animated, and you can sort of feel what's happening. I think I the dialogue for me does work. Like I think one of my favorite laugh points from the first time I watched it was the like when he's talking about like, do you have a girlfriend? He's like, I used to, now she's with Mark, and he's like, I hate I hate Mark or whatever he says.
mhm.
Like it's so funny. I think it's great. I think the dynamic is. I mean, it's what it is what works. I mean, a lot of people when talking about this movie is sort of 2001: A Space Odyssey meets ET, which or Interstellar meets ET, however you want to put it. And I think it's so true. And I think Rocky will like sort of become. I was so annoyed by how much they had spoiled this um in the trailers, but what can you do? They're gonna try to advertise their movie however they're gonna advertise it. But I do think Rocky will become sort of a pretty famous you know movie character following this movie.
Cute anthropomorphized creatures, I think, are a cheat code in media. Like,
Grogu. I mean, not really, but yeah.
Grogu, uh, Chopper. I won't
Yeah.
say where that's from, but
Yes, 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 yes. Oh,
uh, Rocky. Not only because I think people love them, but also because then like they're great for merch.
they're great
Like
for merch.
you then
I
sell
I was so I
Grogu's. And,
yes, I have
oh,
Grogu.
you can't see it currently.
Grogu's behind me. Um, I had not ever. I don't know whether this was in the book or not, but the idea that he was like basically all like tattooed up and had all this stuff on. He had like
Mm.
all the like the visual design of him not just being like a rock, that he would have culture. I thought was like really effective. That was this really good. Just loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think another thing worth talking about is how when the trailers came out, the book readers were like, "Oh no, you're spoiling Rocky. Uh, like that's no good." And that's why, I was saying like, just probably just avoid the trailers because my memory of the book was that like the reveal of Rocky was a big part of it. Like it was a big reveal that there's an alien here and he's going to communicate with that alien and then also like befriend that alien. And that's like a big piece of it. And it felt like it would have been a massive spoiler to have known that ahead of time when reading the book. Um, but I'm actually I think that not only did they spoil it in the trailers, I feel like, and this is purely vibes because I don't remember exactly, but like my memory of it in the book and my experience of it in the movie were different. It felt like they de-emphasized the reveal aspect of Rocky in the movie, probably because they knew that they would be advertising it. And is my guess.
Uh, yeah, yeah, probably. I guess. Yeah, there isn't there. It's so hard to know what I was thinking when I was reading the book, but I do feel like it came as a genuine surprise that like there's an alien. Whereas when you see it play out, it's hard not to just know that like by the time you see Rocky, that it's going to be Rocky. It's going to be an alien. But yeah, I mean, Ryan Gosling has had a pretty funny line about this as well, where he's been talking about like how they just could have never not advertised this. I think based on how the movie is, but the line being like, "So I met an alien," being in the trailer is like, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, they fully spoiled it, but I think from their perspective, like, what else are you gonna? It's what the
Yeah, I
movie is
mean,
about,
I think that like the way I'm seeing it, and this is kind of just a guess again, but like it just felt to me like they were like, we are fully just removing the like this is a big surprise reveal portion of the movie because we will be advertising it, and it's not. I think they might have felt like it's just not that important. So we are going to like even if you hadn't seen the trailers at all, I think that you're not that surprised to find that there's an alien there because right from the beginning of the movie, they're talking about his work, talking about alien life,
yeah.
and they've found living life and they're reproducing alien life. And then you get there and there's a spaceship. Okay, yeah, sure. I guess that makes sense because we've been talking about alien life this whole time. And for some reason, when I was reading the book, that it didn't feel that way. It felt like, really? There's an alien?
Yeah.
And so I wish if I had read the book more recently, I might be able to tell you the details of why it felt that way to me at the time versus watching the movie. But I think ultimately that is the right call. I think that no, if they knew that they were going to be advertising with the alien, then I think it makes sense to remove the surprise reveal of an alien because I think that you would have felt disappointed if they presented it like it was supposed to be a big reveal. And like I think about um, I won't name it, but there's a movie that had like a vampire child girl
Uh-huh.
that advertised that they had a vampire child girl in it, and then like 40 minutes into the movie had a big reveal that the little girl child's a vampire, and it just felt like this makes the movie feel worse to me because I knew that already, and none of this is landing. um and so instead, if you just like remove a little bit of that, and the reveal is essentially a gag where they're judging the spaceships. You're like,
Uh-huh.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is like a friendly alien.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you immediately get it, and it doesn't have to feel like a big reveal in any way. And so I think that ultimately that was done pretty well, and ultimately perhaps people like me being like, don't watch the trailers, uh, overemphasized a point that shouldn't have been there. And I think that there's a good chance that if you watch this movie, you're like, why couldn't I have watched the trailers? Like, what
Oh,
was I missing?
I feel like we've had this debate on this not debate, but like I think about this all the time. And when I'm talking with people about what they should watch is like, what's plot and what's premise, like what
Mm,
is, and I feel like I guess like the one thing about and I'm wondering whether in the book and people who have more maybe recently read the book, I'd be interested to hear from them in terms of part of me feels like at some point in the book you're like, well, it's probably an alien. But I think the other thing is like you don't know whether it is going to be confrontational or like they're going to be in a partnership, which is that's so much of what this movie I mean what the book is about, but that comes as a surprise I think in the book in a way that you kind of always end up figuring out that like I don't know. There's a way in which with all the ways in which a movie gets advertised that it always feels, and I guess part of this because I knew that that's how it would be as well. But I feel like that was in the book. You don't know whether, like, when it's reaching out and sending, and there's a little bit of this in the movie when he's like, "Could it be a bomb? Is it a bomb?"
I think he's also more skeptical in the movie than he is in the book, which
Right,
actually I think reverses your expectations. Where
right,
when he's skeptical, you think he's probably wrong and it's fine. But when
right,
he's like super excited, like, oh, it's an alien, this is so exciting, you're like, whoa, be cautious.
bro. Yeah, come on, calm down. Yeah, true. That's a good point. Yeah. Should we talk about Sandra Oh? Let's get like I feel like there's more. There's an implied romantic thing, which to the point
Mm,
earlier, I thought about bringing this up in terms of like why he wouldn't go. I wonder whether there's an edit of this version that implies there is the thing where he's like, "What are you gonna do for the next like 30? What are you up to?"
mhm.
Um, I do kind of feel like that did not feel like it was there at all in the book, and I think it's
Yeah.
at the very least implied in the movie that like
I thought it was
they
pretty heavily implied.
okay,
I
great,
thought it
great,
I think there was an intentional misdirection of who are you willing to die for?
right.
And then they basically cut to like some moments with him and Strat.
Right, right,
And I think that you are supposed to be led on to this idea that he falls in love with her and she inspires him to go and do this mission. And then I think the idea is that they pull the rug out from under you, and it turns out he didn't volunteer, and she forced him anyway.
yeah.
Which I think is actually very clever. I just, again, I wish that we could have spent a little more time to make it fully land. But like, I like that direction to some degree, although it does feel a little movie magic. That was one of those things that felt like it's a little convenient that like the person forcing you into all of this happens to be this beautiful woman who sings really well and you fall in love and all of that. Which in some ways again works when it turns out that's not what's happening.
Right.
Um, but it did give me that feeling in the movie where I was like, this is a
Well
little convenient.
well, oh, the actually, hold on. Does it not happen? Because like, there's this other world where, like, he's fallen in love with her, so it's part of the reason he doesn't wanna go, right?
Maybe
I don't know. Yeah.
I can see a world where that's there. If that were the case, I wish we had gotten a little like when he's telling her like I can't do it instead of being like sorry, I just can't do it.
Uh-huh.
Like I would have loved for him to be like, don't you not want me to do it? Like like so I wish we had maybe gotten something there because I think that could have worked as well.
And then I feel like that there's extra stuff in the idea that he thinks he'll never go home if he's like if part of going home is that he would potentially see her again. Like, she's gonna
Mhm.
be way older than he is now, but problematic. Problematic age difference,
Mm,
Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, but although it's never said, and you feel like there is a moment to say it, but they don't say it. So probably it's just not true. He's yeah. Anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
mm.
Definitely a change. Definitely like way more explicitly like there's some vibes here that I don't feel like were in the book at all. Again, it's been a very long time since I've read the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Carl's also a great addition, fully new addition. And I loved all the like we're hanging out, figuring it out stuff at the beginning, like them shopping, all that. I thought the
Carl
soundtrack
is
also is
great.
great. The soundtrack is great. Yeah,
Carl was great, and I think the addition of Carl added to the betrayal. I think that the Carl moment
yeah,
felt more like a
great.
betrayal than the rest of it because there was no slapstick left, and it's just him on the ground, and Carl shows up like, "You're gonna do great." It was like, "Really, Carl too?" Um,
Yeah,
so I thought that was good. And I think that there were two moments in particular visually that I really loved. Which one of them I think was the obvious, which is when they're over Adrian,
yeah.
and the red whatever the Petrova line
Mhm.
stuff is like that was pretty cool. Um, I did have a moment of uh like they're all like he's like, "Oh, I'm having a moment." It's like I didn't need the comment on the moment. I that kind of took me out of the moment personally, just a little bit. But it was still
Uh-huh.
very, very cool in a really big 70 millimeter IMAX theater. And then I also really liked the explosion when they were talking about like what are we going to do for the next 30 years.
Yeah, it's really good.
And then the explosion happens, and it was so well done that it just kind of like happens in the background. It almost felt like there wasn't even a focus on it, and you're like, wait, what is that? And then they give it a moment, and the sound comes, and they fly off. I thought that was really well done.
Also, there's so much music in this. I think the soundtrack is like really not just the sound, like the score is really great and the soundtrack is really great. I thought like the Beatles playing when he ships the four things back. I think Sign of the Times by Harry Styles is like a great. So there's so much. There's a moment where they play like a New Zealand Maui choir, which I thought was really great in the choice. It's like so beautiful. It's like it's a bunch of these shots of space. That's sort of like the idea to me, at least, is like we're not just saving like this human, we're saving all of humanity, which includes like all the voices I thought it was like beautiful. What's really stunning about that moment when the explosion goes off is that there's so much silence. It's
Yeah.
so quiet, which is really super, super effective.
I also thought they did the when Rocky comes out of his little bubble to save Grace.
Yes,
Um, I thought that was really well done.
agreed.
And like the smoke coming off of him,
So good.
and the trail of like soot and like stuff after he wakes up. Like, oh, that was really, really well done.
There's one thing I think in the book that I think the movie doesn't do maybe as well, which is just how smart Rocky is and how much he
Mm,
does that. So Grace almost kills him when he's trying to heal the I think it's
mhm.
is it the black soot? Does he clean it all off and it turns
Yeah,
out like
he's like
that's the
wiping
healing?
it off, but like those were like the scabs or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
Yeah. So there's all of these moments where like the way that Rocky view I think that's really well done. The way that Rocky sees Grace as a bit of an idiot. But
Mhm.
it's kind of like he's kind of an actual idiot sometimes. But yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, and I think like the idea that they mention it, but it's not like super emphasized that the Iridians, I think, they never discovered relativity, which is part of why they overpacked their fuel. That's why they had Rocky had extra to give because they didn't have the right amount of fuel because they didn't understand relativity, and they didn't understand radiation, which is probably why the crew died off. But like it kind of makes a little extra sense why they wouldn't like they're not very technologically advanced even though they're also very smart and mechanically capable, and you can sort of understand why that like they don't see with light, and so theories revolving around light might not come as naturally to them,
Yeah.
um and it's also like with Grace now on um uh
No,
Iridia?
Iridia. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Iridia.
Mhm.
He's now getting to like teach them all these like
Right.
high concept technological theories and such. So
Yeah.
um, that's extra detail that didn't need to be in the movie, but like it's one of those things that, like, oh, if you read the book, you can learn a little bit more about these things.
Yeah, there's some stuff that I did like again like the science stuff, but I thought the stuff about like the first moment where, like Rocky wants to see him sleep, I thought is like really I think it's so cute, it's so good. There's so I again there's like the the optimism of this movie is really what I think like is so effective and was so
Mhm.
affecting for me, that it just like really works. Let me ask you something. And also earlier I said a movie since Dune. I know Dune 2 is coming up, but Oppenheimer is probably I feel like one of the last times. Also, I was like I'm going to go see this on the biggest
Mhm.
screen possible. Um, do you think this movie it has Oscar chances? I know the Oscars just ended, and so not to start Oscar season so soon. I think certainly like down the line stuff, it'll have a lot of success and will certainly be nominated. It's a movie that could win, like could be nominated for Best Picture. I won't really talk about winning. I think winning is like unfair, having not seen the rest of the slate. Um,
I think it could be nominated for sure. I don't know that it would win, even having not seen anything else. I mean, I'm thinking about,
so Dune,
like
Let me talk about the movies that are like I think like. So we have Dune Part 3.
mhm,
Uh, you have
Odyssey.
you have the Odyssey. You have a Spielberg movie coming this year as well in Disclosure Day. Those I
I think
think feel like the
being
big ones. Yeah.
being so early in the year, combined with the fact that it's like an audience pleaser, I think are 2 things that hurt it as a best picture. Like it's a little too audience pleasing for you. I mean, granted that that has worked out for best picture winners, especially when once they went to ranked choice. Um, but I think distance will hurt it a lot. I think people will remember this as a big budget IMAX blockbuster movie more so than like a serious Oscar contending kind of movie. I think it will be likely nominated, but I think that like even something a little more serious like The Odyssey, I think might have a stronger chance of a win than this maybe.
The one it sort of reminds me of to a degree is Everything Everywhere All at Once. Where
True.
that is a March release movie that I think like
Mm,
if I was sort of like to path the trajectory of how does this movie end up being nominated and being to potentially win is that is a movie that I feel like the big difference is that movie was a bit of a surprise hit. That
yeah.
this movie feels it is still surprising how well it's done. Made 300 million at the box office so far. It still feels like there was buzz for that, where Everything Ever All at Once, I think, like sort of had some festival energy, and then it sort of came out, and it was like, oh no, you got to go see this. Like this movie is
I
good. Whereas I think that this energy is a little different.
I think that the thing that I found to be just a little bit lacking in like the character arc and thematic elements, I think the Academy really loves that stuff. Um, and I think the quippiness of it also potentially like Everything Everywhere was very funny and quippy and audience pleasing, but it did also feel very thematically deep and had a lot to say about a few different topics. And I'm not sure that Project Hail Mary will linger in the minds of like Academy voters in the same way.
Be interesting. It's very optimistic, which is another thing I think
True.
is something that like the Oscars like as well. So anyway, it's
I mean,
very early.
honestly,
It's so early,
the
but
thing the thing I was thinking of in terms of like Oscar chances was Slumdog Millionaire, which
interesting.
feels to me, and I love Slumdog. I love Danny Boyle. I was a
Uh-huh.
huge supporter of that movie, but like that to me also felt like a big crowd pleasing, like really fun movie that I don't really think a lot about anymore, but like
Uh-huh.
was just a super fun and uh, optimistic enough movie that really landed for people that year. So
I gotta tell, I'm not a rewatcher, and I went to rewatch this movie so quickly. I have not felt that in a while of just like wanting to go hang out with Grace and Rocky again.
mm,
That's what I wanted. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm so happy this movie exists. I'm a This is an example of a time I read a book before I watched the movie, and I was very nervous about this movie. I really like Ryan Gosling. I think he's so charming. I think that there's a world where like this didn't work, and I'm just so happy it worked. So, you know, very pleased with Project Hail
Yeah.
Mary.
I mean, at this point, Andy Weir,
He's gonna get a buttload of money for whatever does.
I think I'm looking now. It looks like he has revealed recently that he's working on a new book.
I wonder if it'll be
And
about a guy who's alone in space and has to kind of figure it out.
listen, don't mess with the formula. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I know. Agreed.
yeah, I mean, he clearly is able to write stuff that works really well in translation, in adaptation, and so he would be a fool not to write something right now that he could probably sell for quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
All right,
Project Hail Mary.
Project Hail Mary, good stuff.
Amaze. That's my review.
Amaze,
Amaze.
yes. That's what we got. That's what we got for Project Hail Mary. Hopefully you enjoyed our discussion. A full hour of discussion on Project Hail Mary. It's really fun. I'm really pleased with the success of it. I hope that between this and Sinners, and potentially the success of and really the historic success of the Dune movies, and with Odyssey coming. By the way, I got a very long preview for Odyssey when I went to go see this.
I did as well. I think the first time I went to go see, I got a much longer Odyssey trailer.
It's like a full on scene from the movie, like just a
Oh.
full unbroken scene.
Oh, maybe I didn't get that. I don't think.
It was like I feel like I watched like 7 minutes of the movie, just straight up, uh, which I was like in part annoyed of, but like I was like, I'm trying to remember my memory of the Odyssey. This must be pretty early in the movie. It must be.
I think I'm gonna try to read the Odyssey as well. I don't think I've ever read it, so I'm gonna try to read.
You know what? I have not read it. I only ever watched like the sci-fi like miniseries or whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know what? I don't think I want to read it. I think I want to watch the movie.
Fair enough.
I think that's what I want to do. All right. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited for the Odyssey. I think that'll be very fun to watch.
I'm very excited.
And I also saw the preview for Dune. Got me a little pumped for Dune, even though I was not the biggest fan of the second movie.
I'm so excited.
I'm actually pretty excited for the third one. So,
in terms of the stuff that's coming up, so I haven't checked out yet, but the new season For All Mankind, I think, dropped its first episodes. So I'll probably be able to chat about that next week. And then Your Friends and Neighbors returns this Friday, I believe. And then in terms of movies, you have obviously the big one, the Super Mario Galaxy movie drops this week, and then the drama, the Zendaya Robert Pattinson movie comes out this week. So I'm gonna try to catch.
It's gonna flop, isn't it?
Yeah, I haven't seen like much about in terms of like it being good. So we'll see. We'll see.
I feel bad because I feel like Challengers also like didn't do well in the box office.
So we're hoping for a Challengers type because it did not do well at the box office. Didn't really get critical like Oscar success, but I love Challengers. So
it was so good.
Yeah.
And these are two actors I really like, so I want their movie to do well. But
I just watched A Good Time for the first time. I had not seen it. I watched it on the man. That movie is so stressful.
I love that. That's easily my favorite Safdie brother movie.
Speaking of people who write kind of the same movie every time, it's like, you mean this guy is going to get into a ton of stressful situations and become more stressful as he tries to get out of them? Crazy.
I mean, that was kind of their original one. I think there was one more before that I haven't actually seen, but I think that was really the prototype for Uncut Gems and all the rest.
If you do it, do well, Yeah.
All right. Well, you can, of course, find me on my Patreon. I'm currently watching, there's a bunch of reality shows happening. I'm currently watching Australian Survivor over on my Patreon. Great week of episodes this week so far. Some really good stuff happening in Australian Survivor. I'm also, of course, watching Survivor 50, which has also been pretty great. House of Villains, jet lag just started, and I'm still going through the Genius. So plenty of things, plenty of shows to watch over on my Patreon. So check it out. Grace, good point you.
Rich and I are doing a Game of Thrones rewatch over on Screen and Page podcast. Check that out. We'll be doing episode 4 this week. It's been very fun to go back. And then on This Century in Cinema, where I'm counting down the top 100 movies of the 21st century, this week is going to be Let the Right One In, which is the Swedish vampire movie.
One of my favorite movies of all time. That's
Very,
one of my
very,
10 out of 10s.
very, very good. Very excited to talk about it because it's a very complicated, complex movie to chat about. So I'm excited to do that. And I'm on social media at Hi From Grace.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We will see all of you next time.